Look back, a reflection of the artist. Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. John Lennon. As I'm writing this, I just saw the movie called Look Back, which is based on the manga by Tatsuki Fujimoto, the man behind Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch. And I just feel like I have to talk about it. So I decided to make a video where I give my analysis and review on the film. The film is about a great but odd friendship born out of love of the same art. The movie is a love letter for manga and manga artists, but also possibly a personal take on Fujimoto on the motives to keep going in the pursuit of being a mangaka, which is a never-ending cycle. Heartwarming, charming, with style and the simplicity it manages, beautiful drawings, but also a heart-wrenching story. These are the terms that I would use to describe the film, since it is a bit related to how life tends to be. Sometimes your passions feel bright and cheerful, but life can make our own passions feel dull and void of fun with the passing of life itself. Life goes on while we are busy pursuing our own interests, like the phrase used in the beginning of the video implies, meaning that while we pursue our own ideas, art, passion, goals, or simply control of our day-to-day, life happens, and one day you unexpectedly are in a completely different place from what you had planned. The movie, on a personal note, I feel talks about the importance of mindfulness, about giving enough energy to our plans and goals, but our eyes, minds, and hearts always in the present, since it will last an instant and become a memory in a flash. Before going into this any further, I am one of those people that believe that in order to give a thorough review and/or analysis, you must talk about absolutely everything. So there will be spoilers for the whole movie. If you don't want to hear spoilers for the movie, but you want to hear my final remarks and thoughts, please skip to the time that appears on screen. The story follows Fujino Ayumu. She's a girl going through the equivalent of elementary school, or mostly known as shogako in Japan. She publishes comic strips known as yonkoma that are 4-panel comic strips in the school's newspaper. Her stories are creative and kinda silly, which I couldn't help but to burst out laughing because this reminded me of the fanfics friends of mine wrote or the ones you usually found in the web in the first decade of the millennium. And those were just as dramatic as the first manga strip we see in the movie about a couple suffering a car crash and dying, but finding themselves in their next life when one of these souls is an asteroid and to be together the asteroid crashes into Earth. We see that the way the characters in the strip are drawn are very simple, but with enough work to be considered good for the standards of a fourth grader. Her friends and classmates praise her work constantly, and Fujino is very proud of her work, passing it as that she's just that talented. And the most recent comic strip didn't take much effort from her, and she did it in just under 5 minutes. Her classmates make the suggestion that Fujino should become a mangaka, but she's not entirely sure if that's her path, since she considers drawing all day to be very boring, and maybe she would prefer to be something more of an athlete. She is called to the teacher's office to ask her if it would be okay for Fujino to give a small space for someone named Kyomoto. It seems that Kyomoto is a student from another classroom that doesn't show up to school, but she likes to draw manga. Fujino doesn't mind this, but she makes a snarky remark that an amateur couldn't do any decent drawings, even mocking Kyomoto by wondering if for being extremely shy and fearful of going to the school, she would be even able to draw something. And here we see the first glimpses of Fujino's personality. Laid back, uninterested in pretty much anything, seemingly very social and very, very proud. Then we cut to the next time the school's newspaper is given to the students. A confident Fujino looks at the strip in the newspaper, and her face slowly starts to change from confidence to a look of surprise and worry. And we read After Class by Kyomoto, and we see a very detailed and beautiful backgrounds of the school in after hours. Then it is shown to us the full section in the newspaper where we cannot help as an audience to compare the drawings made by Fujino that come down to the most basic detail in comparison to the highly detailed works of Kyomoto. This leaves Fujino horrified, and the classmates start to talk about how great the drawings of Kyomoto are. Some kid even mentions that Fujino's drawings look horrible in comparison. And we get an amazing shot of an impossibly large classroom filled with hundreds of students, which to me struck as Fujino feeling judged by hundreds if not thousands of people at the same time. On her way back home, Fujino is looking down and remembering that many times a lot of people praise her ability to draw, but giving extra emphasis on that one moment someone criticized her work. And being totally real, we've all been there. We always focus on the negative comments that bring us down instead of the positive ones that encourage us to keep going regardless of the adversity. Fujino rationalizes the fact that Kyomoto has a lot of time on her hands since she doesn't go to school. This angers/motivates Fujino to look for ways on how to become better at drawing. Fujino starts to study anatomy, perspectives, she draws limbs in different positions and directions, faces, to the point that she spends her days and nights doing only that, since it is the only way she will improve on her art. She draws at her home, at school, in the library, while her family is watching TV, spending quality time, and outside in a park. Fujino doesn't realize this, but life is going by without her even being part of her own. And here, I have 2 points to talk about. One is the part where we all could ponder on as, if you focus on other things than your art, you'll never do anything with your art. And the other is that there is only one life, and it is happening right now. Is your art more important than your friends, family, hobbies, or even health? This is a very difficult topic to take any side with, since we're all artists in some form or another. We all have our own passions, be it drawing, painting, film, dancing, acting, or even why not, a science. Our art is not necessarily something to display in a gallery or a stage. It can be something like an app, a game, speaking different languages, making videos, making TikTok shorts, or it could even be a career path in engineering, architecture, medicine, etc. Those and many, many more things can be your art or your passion. We all want to do something with our talents and we want to improve on our own skill. We dedicate our time to grow in our passion and art. We want to show it to the world and be proud of it. And why not? We want to be recognized by our own work, be it a book, a manga, a movie, a play, a breakthrough in science, whatever, you name it. But in here comes the second point to rear its ugly head. What is it you live for? Is your art your life, or your life is your art? How much is too much to dedicate to your art? As you are improving your skills and following the impossible path of perfection, life ain't waiting for you. Your friends, your relatives, they are growing older, and so are you. Your friends won't marry twice, probably, so missing that day in their lives is something heavy to put in the thin rope of friendship. Maybe one day, sooner or later, your body will finally collapse on you after all these years you've neglected it, in the unending pursuit of your art. And the toll will be more expensive than you can ever afford, metaphorically or even it could be literally speaking. My very personal take on this is no art is worth giving your life up for. This is not to discourage people from pursuing their dreams of living from their art. If that were the case, we wouldn't have the Miyazakis of this world, the Jackie Chans, the Mozarts, the Michelangelos. But we can speak about Miyazaki since I mentioned him. Goro, his son, can't understand Miyazaki, because he was an absent father, pursuing his own art, and even though Miyazaki is an eminence in the world of anime, we the world can't judge on what is better for him as a person, only he can make the statement. But let me at least humbly ask this. Is it worth being a total stranger to your own blood, but somewhat of an acquaintance to the world? Another example is Ingmar Bergman, the Swedish film director behind the acclaimed Seventh Seal. An excellent director, a full artist through and through, but at the same time a father of 9, which come from 5 different women, and a man filled with mistresses throughout his whole life. He even admitted to being an absent father, and his later works in his life showed a yearning for connection and reconciliation with his own complicated life. And granted, Bergman had a rough relationship with his own father that might have fed the thought of focusing solely on art. In a personal role myself, I've gone through similar experiences. I used to be a veterinarian, and I wanted to be the best of the best. I studied hard and attempted to improve on every single thing. But the thing is that, first of all, it's impossible to be good at everything. But in my desire to be the best veterinarian out there, almost 10 years had passed, and when I look back, I did nothing but work and study. Some friends, inevitably, drifted away. My parents were getting old and riding into the sunset of their lives, and my brother became more someone that lived in the same house as me when we used to be as close as can be. Of this topic as a veterinarian and my personal history and take, I'll talk about it in another video, but I wanted to bring it up to explain why I feel no art is worth the things that make their life worth living. But let's proceed with the analysis of this movie. In this montage we see that Fujino is going season after season, drawing, reading, learning, studying on how to become better, and notebook by notebook they pile in small mountains in her room. The montage ends with her final drawing being on fixed perspective. The next scene is set in a classroom, and we have a contrast of a mostly sunny day outside, with a vibrant blue sky and a dark and almost empty classroom, with Fujino sitting at her desk, drawing while 3 girls are talking about plans on what to do later. Fujino is approached by a friend of hers who asks her what she is drawing this time. Fujino answers with little to no enthusiasm in her voice, and her friend, kinda worried, tells Fujino that they're in 6th grade now, and soon they'll graduate and go to junior high. I believe it is the equivalent, or chogako in Japan. Her friend asks her if she's going to keep the drawing things there too, and she tells her that she's getting a little too old to be drawing. This is obviously something that has to hurt a lot of artists out there. The idea that whatever you are pursuing doesn't suit you anymore in the eyes of the world. I personally never felt that to a passion kind of level, but I've met people throughout my life that had gone through it, and some of them that have been open on the topic told me that is one of the worst things you can hear from those you really care about. So we can only imagine how bad Fujino must feel to hear people that she cares about are judging her desire to draw, and how this must be painful to her. Anyways, back to the film. Her friend explains that Fujino doesn't hang around or play with her group of friends anymore, and when she is present, she is only drawing, which will only look bad on her in junior high, because she will look like a crazy obsessive person. The same scenario repeats in her own home, where her sister says pretty much the same thing her friend said to Fujino. She tries to encourage Fujino to join her karate classes instead of being all alone in her room drawing manga. The next scene is about Fujino reading the newspaper with an unsurprised look on her face. We see a silent set of shots comparing Fujino's new and improved work and Kyomoto's summer festival strip. Fujino is still comparing herself with Kyomoto, and she decides to give up, since she believes that she is no match for Kyomoto, and she decides to retake her life back and go for ice cream with her friends after school. In the following montage, we see Fujino living her life, going out with her friends, hanging out with her family, and slowly getting rid of her notebooks filled with drawings and her books on how to improve her drawing. This montage is somewhat happy, since we see Fujino living good moments with the people she loves. Color is coming back to her life in scenes with vibrant tones and her overall expression displaying happiness. And before we know it, her graduation day came, and she is asked by her former teacher to give Kyomoto her diploma. Fujino refuses in the beginning, stating that she would rather not do it, but her teacher tells her that even though they never met and Fujino quit the newspaper, they were still co-workers. Fujino reluctantly agrees and goes to Kyomoto's house, where no one answers at the door. Fujino lets herself in, asking for someone being inside the house. And before she could leave the diploma at the entrance, a noise is heard from one of the rooms, and Fujino decides to investigate. In one of the hallways, Fujino sees piles and piles of notebooks similar to the ones she used to draw in, and at the top of one of these stacks she finds a blank 4-panel strip. She draws a small but very comical manga strip where there is people outside of Kyomoto's house cheering, saying "Don't go out" and "Go out" in different panels, only to show that it is a contest for people that doesn't leave the house and Kyomoto seems to be winning, only for the last panel to show a skeleton with the name Kyomoto written on top of it. This displays a saying that we have in Mexico that goes like this: Uno puede salir del barrio, pero el barrio nunca sale de uno, which translates to one can get out of the hood, but the hood never gets out of one, which implies that you are you, no matter what you do or where you go. And in here, it applies to the fact that Fujino, even though she is no longer actively drawing, she still loves it. Fujino looks at her drawings with a smile, only for said smile to fade away and asks herself what on earth is she doing. And a gust of wind suddenly makes the small strip go out of her hands and pass below the small gap on the door to Kyomoto's room. Fujino leaves the house in a hurry and is a bit shaken about the small jokingly strip she drew, but she is quickly followed outside by Kyomoto, who in a very shy manner reveals to be a huge fan of Fujino's work since the 3rd grade, and asks Fujino for an autograph. Meanwhile, Fujino is looking at Kyomoto with a poker face on her expression. Eventually, Fujino gives her the autograph in the back of her robes. Meanwhile, Kyomoto is info dumping on how much she loves her series, and notes the dates from when they started and when they ended, also noticing the improvements in the year that Fujino was dedicated to improve her drawing skills, and praises her on her ability to meet deadlines when Kyomoto sometimes couldn't do it. Kyomoto praises Fujino for being a genius on the medium, but still she wonders why Fujino stopped drawing the strips in the 6th grade. Fujino lies and says she quit because she wants to take her skills to the next level and sign up for a manga competition. Kyomoto excitedly asks Fujino to see her works, but she replies that she has the whole story in her head but hasn't done the drawings yet. Kyomoto asks to see it once again and Fujino agrees to show it to her when it's ready. On her way back, Fujino starts walking nonchalantly, but slowly starts to skip and hop, at first with small skips but eventually doing it with full energy. For me, this is because she is ecstatic to know that someone she considers to be amazing at drawing got inspired by her to start pursuing art herself, which must be an amazing feeling to feel. This motivates Fujino to start drawing as soon as she comes back to her room. The next scene is of Fujino in junior high, drawing and overall not being in a group of friends. But as soon as she comes back to her house, Kyomoto is waiting for her in her room drawing. And let me just pause this for a second. I just wanted to say I found it odd for Kyomoto to be in what seems to be Fujino's room, and implying she has been there all day, which I just found weird. That is all. Let's proceed. Fujino is impressed by Kyomoto's advances in her work, and Kyomoto says it is easy for her since she doesn't tend to go to school, but she remarks that she has a feeling they won't finish the 45 pages in time, which I assume it is for the manga contest, which it seems that it wasn't a lie after all. Days go by with both girls drawing in Fujino's room, showing more and more pages every day, until one day the room is completely empty. Fujino and Kyomoto are nowhere to be seen, and no paper sheets are present in the shot. Then we see both girls talking with a man in what seems to be an office or meeting room. The man is praising their work and remarking how impressed he is since they did this at a young age and the fact that they did it while studying. In here we can see where both girls complement each other. Fujino specializes in stories and characters, therefore her personality is more of an extrovert, and her way with people comes easy for her. Whereas Kyomoto is shy and can't look at people in the eye so easily, blending in perfectly with the background and avoiding any form of attention. That's why the beauty of her work comes in scenery and the backgrounds. This subtle form of writing highlights both characters in their own unique way and why they make for an amazing team and a very unique but kinda odd friendship. During the talks with the man, Fujino explains their roles, where Kyomoto did all the background scenes, giving credit where it's due. The man says that both drawings and story are top quality, and it could easily win an honorific mention in the contest. Then we see both girls walk under a snowstorm on their way to a convenience store, where they browse the magazines, and they discover that their work has won second place in the teenage category, where the prize is 1,000,000 yen, which is around 6,000 bucks. The work, called Metal Parade, is published under the pseudonym of Kyo Fujino, which I assume is a mixture of both names of the girls. This brings joy to both girls, who jump with joy inside the convenience store while the snowstorm outside continues. Fujino withdraws 100,000 yen to hang out with Kyomoto and treat Kyomoto for all her hard work. She says they both could draw a lot more manga and earn way more money with their great work. The next scene is a beautiful montage of their friendship, where Fujino takes Kyomoto outside and they are both really happy and holding hands while running around the city. On their way back on the train, Kyomoto thanks Fujino for taking her out of her room, and she explains that she didn't like to go outside since she was afraid of people, but Kyomoto had a lot of fun with Fujino that day. Also, here she also explains that she only drew manga because she didn't have anything to do with her own life by staying at home, and now she was thankful for drawing, and she thanks Fujino for the opportunity she directly or indirectly presented to her. The two girls keep drawing and spending time together, getting inspiration from all the places that they went to during the montage of the girls running holding hands. Suddenly, we can see that Kyomoto's hand starts to slip and her face turns to a more worried expression. During a meeting with a man, we find out that their works are getting a manga series. This pleases Fujino, but Kyomoto, even though she smiles, she doesn't seem to be happy about it. And out of nowhere, while walking in the countryside, Kyomoto breaks the news to Fujino. She can't keep working with her anymore, since she wants to get into college to study arts. She apologizes for this, and Fujino asks where this all came from. Fujino, hurt, unfairly says that it is okay since in the end Kyomoto only drew the backgrounds, and she can get assistance to work on that. And she also says that art students don't have a lot of work when they graduate. And even though she's not wrong with the job opportunities, she's saying it because she's hurt and angry at Kyomoto, and wants to persuade her on not pursuing her desires, and also says that staying with her is the best outcome for Kyomoto. But Kyomoto says that she will do her best to be able to talk with strangers and be a better artist, and stop depending on other people. Fujino lashes out at Kyomoto, but Kyomoto keeps replying that she will make her best effort to try to beat her shyness. We cut to Fujino working on her manga and how popular her work is getting week by week. But Fujino's life again is consumed by drawing manga, and slowly but steadily the colors on the background whenever Fujino is on the scene get darker and darker. The gray tone starts to set in and vibrant colors are nowhere to be seen. One night, Fujino is working and talking on the phone about work, while the TV is heard in the background. Everything in this scene, from Fujino's tone of voice to her body movements, show that she's anxious or stressed over her work and may be meeting deadlines. Then, Fujino is left alone after the call, and she keeps working, and we can slowly hear the news from the TV in the background. The news say that a man got into the art school of Yamagata and started to attack people with a pickaxe. Fujino tries to call Kyomoto, but there seems to be no answer, while a panicked Fujino walks around her room. Immediately after the phone stops ringing, Fujino's mom calls, and without the need for telling us anything, we, the audience, know what happened. We see a flashback of Fujino and Kyomoto walking in the snow, talking about Kyomoto's work and improvements, which might have been the moment that Kyomoto decided to go to art school. The next scenes display a somber ambience with a background noise out of a thriller or a horror movie, where we see newspapers, articles, and the news on the TV talking about the attack on the art school. It seems the man claimed that they were stealing his art and shamelessly displaying it. Fujino decides to put on hold her manga series, and we see Kyomoto's funeral in a very empty room. Then we see Fujino outside of Kyomoto's room, unwilling to get into it and standing in the hallway. Fujino picks up a magazine next to her and browses the pages, until a small 4-panel strip appears in one of the pages. It was the strip that Fujino drew when she went to give Kyomoto her diploma all those years ago. This brings a sense of dread and guilt to Fujino. Because of her drawing that strip is the reason that Kyomoto stepped out of her room in the first place, so Fujino is destroyed by this realization. Fujino, in a fit of rage, rips apart the strip, by not finding a purpose to drawing at all anymore, and that due to it, her friend is dead. One of the panels, the ones that says "Don't go out," crosses the gap in the door, and we see a young Kyomoto the day Fujino went to give her her diploma, but this time, due to the strip, she doesn't make a noise, so Fujino only leaves the diploma, and the two never meet. Then, another montage showing Kyomoto drawing in her room and eventually reading a book about the art in backgrounds, and she, on her own will, joins art school, making us see that the events that transpire aren't Fujino's to blame. We see Kyomoto improving as an artist and making beautiful paintings, when one day while sitting on a couch in the hallways of the school taking a break, a man noticeably off walks in and starts talking nonsense to Kyomoto. And look, the first time I saw this scene, I was scared, because we already knew that Kyomoto met a very painful and horrible end. I didn't want to know the details. I couldn't bear to know the details. I already grew attached to this character to find out how it all unfolded. But, regardless, let's see what happens. Suddenly, the man starts attacking Kyomoto, but she is saved by Fujino by beating the man. Then, we find out that Fujino was jogging nearby when she saw the man enter the school with the pickaxe, and this made her very suspicious of the guy. In this world, we see that Fujino and Kyomoto were meant to know each other regardless. Kyomoto asks Fujino why she stopped drawing, and Fujino says she decided to give it another try and invites Kyomoto to work with her when she gets a manga series. Then we see Kyomoto drawing a small manga strip about how Fujino saved her life, and this is taken by a gust of wind and goes through the gap in the door, but now in the other direction to the hallway. I just want to do a brief pause, because this part of the movie confuses me. It has some sort of mystical aspect to it all, but in the end, there is no payoff. Aside from giving us the feel that in another universe where the girls don't meet, Kyomoto lives and was saved by Fujino. Anyways, let's continue. And suddenly, we are brought back to the real world, where Fujino finds this small strip called Look Back. Fujino opens the door to Kyomoto's room and sees that Kyomoto got every manga chapter from her series, and on Kyomoto's door we see her robes that she used to get Fujino's autograph. This represents that Kyomoto never stopped admiring Fujino. The next scene, Fujino explains her feelings about manga, calling it a tedious process, and then we hear Kyomoto ask her, why does she even draw them? And we see another montage of Fujino writing and drawing Metal Parade, and her process on it and showing it to Kyomoto like she promised. The motif I take from this scene is that she draws for her friend, whom she shares the same passions with, more than following an artistic process per se. Fujino's reason to draw manga is drawing with and for her friend, and on a sunny morning with a clear beautiful blue sky, we see Fujino resume her work, with the small strip named Look Back on her window above her desk. Fujino keeps drawing now in memory of her dear friend Kyomoto, and credits start to roll. In the beginning, Fujino didn't have a real reason to draw. It seems she did it just for fun, Then she took Kyomoto's drawing as some sort of competition. After she meets Kyomoto is due to her bond for the love of drawing that they share, and later it became a business and a contest for popularity. By the end, she draws out of love for Kyomoto's memory. This movie is a great movie. A love letter to manga, to animation, to art and artists, regardless if you work on it or if you pursue it for the sake of growing as a person. It is also a love letter to friendship, especially odd friendships, and the importance of mutual understanding in those friendships. I can't help to feel a lot of feels from this movie, from happiness to a metaphorical gut punch and feeling empty at times. But I also felt hope and a renewed sense of motivation to pursue art in any way I like, the way I like. The animation is amazing, it's fluent and smooth. The drawings are amazing also, they share a lot of emotions, and also the color palette tells a story of its own. The foreground and background are an amazing thing to behold, with a lot of details in both, filled with small references to other mangas, and having shared importance in the film. The story is beautiful and gives a great arc of an unusual friendship between both of the girls. It also asks the question constantly to our protagonist, sometimes in a very subtle way. Why do you do what you do? And even though the circumstances we get the answer are still a bit somber, I feel that it is a very satisfying reason for Fujino to keep drawing manga. Also, there is a subtle idea for me that every artist is different, and you can't and shouldn't compare yourself to someone else, since everyone lives an artistic process in a different way, and maybe whatever you consider important in your art is not important to another artist. Of course, this movie is not free of any criticism. I feel the movie, in order to save time, relied a lot on montages. And I know montages are used as a form of narrative for the passing of time for characters, and it is used sublimely in this film. But I would be lying if I didn't say that they happen just too often. Also, I got a bit confused the first time I watched the movie, with all this mystical slash fantastical section throwing me off from the mood, because I was confused on what was real and what wasn't, or even what it meant at the moment. And I don't want to break the immersion from the story, but if we're going to point fingers on who's to blame for the plot twist, I think it's the teacher. I mean, if we're going to be strict at pointing fingers, he is the cause of this all. He set in motion all the events in the story. Okay, but all jokes aside, I can see why this movie might not be for everyone. Either you must really love anime, manga, or pursue an art form or passion with a burning heart. Or you might find yourself not liking this film, which it's not bad. This film is a love letter to the medium it was made on, and the pondering of Fujimoto on the continuous inspiration to draw manga. So, if you're a huge fan of manga or anime, an artist, or you just like simple slice of life films, I recommend this movie to you. If that is not your case and you prefer anime to be more action oriented and you are not a fan of slow movies with symbolism or a lot of contemplation, then I would say that you better pass on this 57-minute film. Also, the movie talks about the importance of enjoying your passions. Working hard is important, but in the movie we see that the best moments personally for Fujino is when she is enjoying her own life, when hanging out with friends, family, or even drawing and hanging out with Kyomoto, not when she is getting better, nor popular, I say in air quotes, in the manga universe. The movie, more than asking the protagonist, it ends up asking the audience, why do you pursue your art? And taking this question to heart, I think that my art is entertainment. I like entertaining people, either by making them laugh, enable a conversation or analysis, or just by making people space out for a brief moment and not think about real life for a while. I also like painting miniatures, which I also use as an entertainment medium on live streams where a small community is slowly growing week by week. A passion I've been pursuing for 3 years now, and I've dedicated time to it to improve and learn new things about. And a passion that even though I have next steps planned like making dioramas, I still think it's a never ending quest. In the end, I think I pursue my arts and passions for myself. I like moving, doing things, learning new skills, and viewing the world in different ways, not only my default. I want for my Wikipedia article to look like those of the great thinkers of yore. You know, those that said person so and so, an architect, physician, philosopher, poet, actor, sculptor, writer, and the list goes on and on and on. I want to learn as many skills as I can before my time in this world is up, and I want to learn as many languages as possible so that I can communicate with people from all around the globe. Now, I'm only left with one question for you, the listener. Why do you pursue your art? I want to hear you out and hear your stories about your art and passions and your personal quest on them. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. I hope to see you again on my next video. This has been Dorgeek speaking to you. Bye bye.
怖い笑いはもう聞き飽きたこれからは切れ先全てを受け取り帰